Airport staffs are currently undergoing regulatory training on security, dangerous goods, airside safety, cleaning and aircraft marshalling this week. Over 60 people, including the police and the fire service, have been in the training sessions with an Air New Zealand trainer, Tony Hatton. We caught up with Tony Hatton yesterday during one of their sessions.
When I came up 4 years ago, they were concerned that we didn't have a secure perimeter. There was big holes in the fences, the gates weren't shut. They're just fixing the problem now, is keeping departing passengers secure. So people that have been through outbound processing need to be kept sterile before they get on the airplane. It's to keep safe, both security and dangerous goods and operating around the aircraft. There are protocols to ensure that everybody has a safe journey and that the staff themselves aren't damaged in any way. Out of here you carry very little in the way of dangerous goods. Probably the most regular one would be fuel samples. So every batch of fuel that brought to the island, they take samples and it goes back to Auckland for analysing to make sure that the quantity and quality is up to standard.
Tony says this type of training is conducted every 2 years in light of any changes to IATA regulations, new staff, as well as addressing any concerns that the flight carrier in New Zealand may have.
ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organisation, they've updated the security, and so we've changed that this year as well. And just generally updating it, it's like, we've got a new aircraft type up here now, we're using the Airbus instead of the Boeing 737, so all of that is an ongoing training program. We will achieve that everybody will have passed their dangerous goods because it's required regulatory, so we will be doing that. And there will be updating everybody's, like William and Safety and that do training at the airport as well, so we'll be re-certifying them as trainers. I think it's been successful. It's perhaps I'm here a little bit longer than I need to be because of airplanes, but no, it's gone well. As I say, even on the Friday, we're looking at one of the things we're teaching them is marshalling the aircraft. So we'll be using somebody newly trained to marshal the airplane on Friday while I'm there and open doors. And it's a matter of just keeping everybody safe.
The training for some will refresh their memory and also help raise standards to ensure that operations at the airport ensure safety of incoming and outgoing passengers. Complaints by air travellers of the transit area at the airport has proved successful after the front area of the lounge was closed off. The transit lounge was previously allowed access onto the open area. However, security concerns by the airline forced the closure. Some of the passengers said the lounge can be distressful when there's many awaiting boarding because of the heat, and authorities should try to address the issue. Newer police who monitor the security areas at the airport said concerns have been addressed by the airport. Inspector Brent Ioane said there is a temporary wall being erected to allow passengers onto the open area front of the lounge until a more permanent canopy is installed. A good news for passengers, and certainly if the second flight service increases traffic at the airport. Growing food crops economically is the concept behind a workshop held today by the Niue Chamber of Commerce with the help of an expert horticulturalist from New Zealand. High costs of importing vegetables to the island has Chamber trying to encourage more people to consider alternatives such as hydroponics to growing more leafy greens on the island. Hydroponics is a method of growing plants using mineral nutrient solutions in water without soil. Gary Owen says the training gives an idea to people of what can be done commercially on the island with crops that are short but in high demand, such as tomatoes, lettuces, and so forth.
It's not as complicated as what a lot of people think. You can do it on a smaller scale in the home. You can keep it a very simple system right up to full commercial operations which are totally automatically operated for larger entities, which on a island such as this is not as necessary as we do, say, back in New Zealand, where we have larger systems. With hydroponics, we've eliminated weeding, digging. The growth rate has increased. The issues that not only a place like Niue can have, but other islands in the Pacific, is that you have very good growing conditions as far as your climate is concerned. I mean, if you look at your island, it's beautiful and lush and green. However, your soil is an issue, and it's often the same with a lot of islands in the Pacific. It's volcanic. Water goes straight through it. It has very little nutrients in it. There are some plants that will survive extremely well and do very well, but it is difficult to grow the likes of your lettuces or leafy greens in these sort of conditions. So the advantage of growing them hydroponically, we're adding the nutrients to it. You've got full control over the crop that you're actually producing. You'll get high quality, quick turnaround, and should be able to supply with a system that's set up properly lettuces all year round to the demand that's required.
Hydroponics is not a new concept on the island, but the idea to set up commercially hydroponic systems has some wondering about the effects it will have on water resources.
If you irrigate on the ground, as we usually do, you have a very high evaporation point. You lose a lot of your water through evaporation, where with hydroponics, with a NFT system, which stands for nutrient film technique, we are recycling the solution. So therefore, the amount of waste of water is mainly through transpiration, which is literally what the plants are drinking. So the amount of water we actually go through per plant is going to be less than what you would actually use if you were growing in the ground. So it's economic to do so. If they can produce their own crops here on the island, I think that would be very advantageous to both the growers and the people who are buying the product, which will be nice and fresh.
The turnout to the workshop today was very good, with farmers and interested business people keen to find out more. But depending on the size of the setup, there will be initial setup costs that could be a few $100s, or if commercially, thousands of dollars. The concept, however, is to get people to think economically to ensure they get the profitable returns of venturing into commercial hydroponics. Gary says he will be visiting some of the hydroponic sites already set up on the island throughout this week. A recent detection of the dog virus called parvovirus has been examined further by one of the local volunteer veterinarians, Deb Curtin. Mrs. Curtin said tests have now been confirmed with the earlier detection of the fatal disease. She said people must remember to be aware of the symptoms by their dogs.
I've just finished the last 28 tests, and of those 28 tests, I've found that parvovirus is here on Niue, and 25 of the 28 dogs tested positive for the antibodies, which means they've been exposed to it in the past and have developed some antibodies to the virus. 3 of the dogs that tested negative were of various ages, and some of them were young, which you'd expect, about 3-4 months old. You expect them to be negative at that point, but there was also a 3-year-old dog that was negative as well. So it seems that as they get older, they don't necessarily develop the antibodies to it as yet. So it means they're still susceptible to developing the disease. But the good news is that the other virus that I tested for, which is distemper virus, it wasn't found on Niue at all. So that's really good. We're still very interested in knowing if anyone has a dog with symptoms of parvo, which are vomiting, diarrhoea, lethargy, fever. Sometimes the diarrhoea might have blood in it, sometimes it doesn't, but they generally get very depressed and dehydrated very quickly. Now, if your dog has any of those symptoms, then we'd like to know about it. I have got some other tests that I can do on their faeces, and it will tell us whether the symptoms are being caused by parvovirus or whether it's something else, but it helps us to tailor some treatment for them, and I've got some antibiotics and things that I can give people if their dogs have got those symptoms to try and help the secondary infection from the disease.
She said that if dogs are detected early, they can be treated, and there are also plans in place to address the issue of parvovirus. Caught
in the very early stages, you've got the best chance of trying to get on top of it, but often after a day or so up in the heat here, then it can have gone too far. And even back in New Zealand, it's a very quick-moving virus and can often be deadly, and that's hence the reason for vaccination. So not always can it be treated. This sort of all started because I approached a vaccine company in New Zealand about getting some vaccinations for the dogs up here when I suspected parvo was here, and they have offered to donate enough vaccine to do all the dogs on the island. So the idea of that would be to provide immunity to all the dogs for the parvo virus, and if we can get the whole population vaccinated, that would then provide what they call herd immunity, so then eradicates the disease from the island, and that would be a world first if we can pull it off.
Another activity, Mrs. Curtin joined in last week as a volunteer with group Spores, who were on the island last week. She said they were very pleased with the outcome of the animals and treatment received at the clinic. 109 animals were seen and treated by Spores and Mrs. Curtin in 5 days. If animal owners wish to receive more information on animal welfare, you can contact Mrs. Curtin or the Department of DEF. As the school holidays draws to a close, it has been a productive 2 weeks for students in the Youth Employment Scheme. More than 15 senior students of Niue High School have had the opportunity to experience life in the workforce. The program scheme started back in 2008 and is run by the Chamber of Commerce. For some, the experience has been beneficial, learning about team dynamics and getting hands-on experience in areas of interest in the private sector. We caught up with some students at the St. Joseph Mechanics and Stone Solutions to see how the experience was progressing and how it has them thinking about the future.
It's going great. Learning a lot. From those two back there and from my other workmates, have been helping me explain parts that I don't know, and pretty much 2 options in life. You gotta have a backup plan and your main plan.
So which plan is this?
This is my backup plan. Because main plan is aiming to study medicine. So if medicine doesn't work out that well, then mechanics.
Just to put the hardboard inside on the walls and ceiling, and we're fixing on the deck now, learning heaps. Yeah, I've enjoyed it. It's good. Learn heaps stuff and easy stuff, and boss, he's good. He teaches us every 5 minutes on what to do, and he corrects us if we make bad mistakes.
We also asked them what influenced their choices or selection of work experience.
Just to help out my uncle with his work, yeah, and pretty much just learn carpentry for backup plan in case my future career will not go as what I planned.
So what is this future career you're looking at?
Medicine.
Mainly to provide help for my family more than one way, other than financially. Can help them with mechanics. If a car breaks down in front of the house, of course I know what to do, and pretty much just to gain some experience for future references. It's helping us, giving us an insight on what lies ahead of us, what work's going to be like, so we know what to expect when we're in the future and what to study, so we can understand more, and so we don't have to run around, hey, how do you do this, how do you do that? We already know from past experience. From this, we know what to do.
As students prepare to head back to school next week, hopefully with some valuable lessons that will influence their future career pathways. The beginning of the Women's Island Kilikiki on Saturday didn't get off to a promising start as rain forced most of the games to cancel. Saturday promised rain, and that was what greeted most teams as they arrived on the fields. However, as the morning progressed, with reasonably good weather, it worsened after lunch, forcing 3 games to cancel. Yesterday, a call by the Niue Women's Kilikiki Executive Committee to gauge the response from the 4 teams whose games were cancelled due to rain did not result in a decision. That has yet to be taken back to the Executive Council on Thursday for discussion. Chairperson of the Women's Cricket, Mrs. Puakinako Fisi, said today the results have not been received by the committee from the teams that finished the games, but the others will be taken into account at the Executive Committee meeting We will bring you more on this story in our future news bulletin. And that is the conclusion of our news bulletin for tonight. We do hope you can join us for our next bulletin on Thursday. And don't forget to head on down to Alofi tomorrow for the Anzac commemorations that should start early in the morning at around about 4:30.